What's up? What's up? It's time for Done Way Past Funny with your host, Sugar Ray. And G.D. Fenderson. Join us as we take a look back at the first time comedians took the stage with this week's guest, Chipp Jones. It's time to get down and get dope with Done Way Past Funny. Hi, I'm G.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist and host of Done Way Past Funny. This is part 2 of our 3-part interview with the very talented Chipp Jones. Enjoy.
But I got to meet a whole lot of people. I got to hang. I remember I hung out in a car one day with Lenny Kravitz because I was tasked to go pick him up and bring him to the show and drive him around wherever he went. He found out I was a comedian. He's like, "Oh man, I want to come to your show." He goes, "But I think they want me to be at the Warner Theater tonight to do my show." I was like, "Yeah, that's probably a good idea." Penn Jillette. I got to walk around the city with Penn Jillette, which was amazing because Penn Jillette is like 6'7".
Yes.
He's almost 300 pounds. I mean, he's a giant. And we're walking through downtown DC because he wanted to go to the Cato Institute on 10th Street. And nobody noticed him or recognized him. And I'm just like, okay, maybe you don't know Penn and Teller, but nobody's like, who's this giant walking down there? I mean, you would at least like, is he a basketball player? But people didn't even seem to notice him. I was like, okay, that's weird. Everybody was in their own little world. They didn't care about this giant that's walking past them. They didn't even notice that the sun disappeared for a couple seconds.
As he walked by.
Yeah. But yeah, I got to meet a lot of cool people. Wanda Sykes. Who did I say before? It was neat. Alicia Tyler, got to meet her.
Yeah, like I said, we're like fame adjacent.
Yeah.
Although you have more fame adjacent connections than I have. I mean,
and I also used to have some from my sister because my sister was a Black poet and documentary filmmaker, and so through her I got to meet Denzel Washington. She did this this documentary for HBO. HBO in 2000 did a series called 100 Years of, and everybody had a task, like 100 years of music or 100 years of literature or something. So she got tasked with 100 years of sex. And what they did is they took a documentary filmmaker and they paired him with a Hollywood producer. And so she was paired with Robert Townsend as her producer.
Robert Townsend, the what was that hero movie he did? I know you're talking about though. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's mostly known for his comedy that he funded off of credit cards. Hollywood Shuffle, which was his big break. He was mostly an actor, and then he did Hollywood Shuffle and broke big. But yeah. But she was well connected. So
my sister used to be a chauffeur driver.
Mm.
Limo driver
at
one point, and she was constantly bringing me home autographs of people, and I'm like, doesn't do me any good. I didn't meet them.
That's right. It's the same thing. My wife and I were not very religious, so we have a son, and we decided that we had to do something to augment sort of a cultural and humanitarian philosophy in him. So we used to spend a lot of money sending him to these leadership camps. Right. And I remember we sent him to this one leadership camp. I think it cost us like $5,000 for 2 weeks.
Wow.
But it was over Christmas break. And at this camp, he got to meet Bill Gates, Desmond Tutu, Al Gore, and as a group, they went to Obama's first inaugural. They had seats down front at Obama's first inaugural. And then,
That's $5 grand well spent.
yeah, and his senior year, he was voted one of the top 100 high schoolers in the country. And that year, he went to the White House twice. He got tasked by Arnie Duncan to come for the No Child Left Behind, which was his first time to meet Obama. And then he did this internship with the Senate. So he went and had lunch with Obama a second time that year. So I was like, did Obama go, hey, don't I already know you? So
you
now
can call me Barry now. We've hung out twice. You can call me Barry now.
So now he's learning coding. This is his new project, is to do Python. But so everybody around me has had a linkage to fame. So that's why I say fame adjacent.
Now, you started at 47. So I started at 54. Well, 54 years and 10 months. It's hard for me to say 55 because I really wasn't 55, but it was really close. But when you start doing comedy, a lot of times they want you to do the bringer shows and stuff like that. And younger people, it's easier for them to get their friends excited about comedy. But at our age, our friends all have lives, children, families, jobs, and stuff like that. So did you have issues with being able to do the bringer shows, or?
I didn't do many bringers. One thing is I did a lot of comedy out of town. Like I'd go to New York and I would talk to, there's like this one guy, Bob DeBono, who would book stand up New York, and he'd book Carolines and stuff. And I go, well, I'm coming up from DC. I can't do much of a bring. And the bringer, he's like, oh, okay, well, send me a tape. And back then you actually were sending a tape. We didn't have any links. And he's like, okay, I'll put you on the show. And it's funny because that New York show was like a regular show. Like I said, David Tell was closing the show, and he's like, I know you can't bring much, but we'll put you on. And when I went up, I actually have family in Queens, and it was my cousin's birthday. And so I told her I was coming up, if you and your girlfriends aren't doing anything. And so she actually brought 20 people to that show. So Bob DeBono's going, wait, I thought you couldn't bring people. Well, every once in a while, lightning strikes. But the biggest thing is once I got in and saw what was going on, I actually teamed up with a group of people who you met, like Marcus Brown. I don't know if you know Marcus Brown, and Erwin Loring.
Yeah, I know Erwin Loring. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah. So, and Danny Rolando, and we started a group called Kaleidoscope Comedy, and we actually put on shows. Right. So that way I sort of got around having to be on bringers because I was on our own shows. And then, the way it works is once you're producing shows, people will put you on their shows because they want you to put them on their shows, on your shows.
Yes.
So I didn't do very many bookers. It didn't have that strife. Thank God.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because it is harder for older people to get people coming out. I mean, the interesting thing is I did some of the early in the days when the DC Improv started using the side room for what they call their open mic shows. I was in on that, and I actually would have some of my computer customers come. I would let them know, and we're going to come see it. So it actually had people come out, but you weren't required to bring people. But it's always they always like it when you do bring people. Then it gives you access to the back room. They're like, oh, he can bring people, so let's put him on.
Right. Let me hit the second segment. Now, the first segment was basically with was it slavery and
that was David Carradine. Yeah, David Carradine and slavery cards.
Yes. Yeah, which I love this the spotters. David I've now because I've actually seen that joke 3 times now today, and I've laughed, and I've still laughed. I've laughed at it 3 times in a row the same day.
It's funny for me to look at it because I've done that recently, and it's such the construction is so much tighter, and it's so much better edited that it even gets a bigger laugh now. Because it's a good premise, but it's sort of loose in the construction of it,
Right.
and now it's really on point. That I actually in the beginning of the joke say, he died of autoerotic asphyxiation, so that
Right.
it sets up what it is. The way the joke in the old clip is that people would have to know what that is to understand. And I guess I was treading on the fact that it was so current that people would know,
Right.
what he died of. But it's
Yeah,
it's
that
it's
helps when you have something like that where
yeah,
it's in the news that, although it can backfire if you, I did
cut too much out. Yeah.
yeah, well, actually I did when I was first starting out, I I had a plan to do a 90-minute show from the very beginning. From as soon as I decided to do comedy, and I've been doing it for 2 weeks, I decided I was going to do a 90-minute special. 2 weeks in, I said I'm going to start writing. I started writing and compiling a 90-minute sketch, 90-minute show. But I didn't want people to see the 90-minute show, but I wanted to get experience. So I was taking news stories.
Uh,
And so most of my material, since I was doing mics, I started in Florida. I was doing mics frequently in Florida, and I was doing news stories just so I could get out there. But I wasn't showing them the stuff that I wanted to put on a DVD because I didn't think it was fair for me to be practicing that and then ask people to come see that show.
right.
So I was like hiding that material, and this was right after was the killing. Was it in France? There was a newspaper where there was like a murderer. I'm trying to think.
You're not talking about the bombing.
I think so. Was it
Yeah.
Charlie? I'm trying to think.
Yeah. They bombed the paper because they had a cartoon,
Oh yes,
a comedy cartoon of Allah in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that I did. So I was writing about that, and it was a college crowd, and I just knew they would know. I knew
Mm-hmm.
they'd be right on top of that. And I did this thing, and I hit the punchline, and then I realized they had no idea what to. And my wife told me, my wife goes, not everybody follows the news like you do. I
Right.
said, but this
Right.
is a college crowd. I said,
Right.
they're gonna know this is like in the news today, and so it's like it'd been in the news for like maybe 1 or 2 days. So I was like really hitting it, what I thought was fresh, and I did it, and like nobody knew that. It was like took them a week to catch on.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, okay, so I botched that one up. So you have jokes, you have good jokes from the past that you just love to be able to resurrect. Because I see like you're still doing the hair weed joke.
Yeah,
But
I
is this
still do that
but
because
is it something
I
that you go ahead?
still have that. And that joke, it still works.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more muted, and I think that's simply because weed is now legal in so many places that I
Hmm.
think it doesn't have the same sort of I don't know, taboo,
Yeah.
so. But I'm trying to think. The old jokes that I still do, the slavery card stuff, which has expanded and become bigger. Um, um, some of the stuff I do about me, which I used to call hair and weight, I
Right.
still do those, but they too have expanded and have more nuance and adds to them. And then I've added stuff now like that I'm old, which goes in front of that stuff. When I
Right.
go down the list of me as a comedian. A lot of the stuff that I used to do, sort of about marriage and my wife and I, has gone away because I do more. I do almost exclusively. I do more clean shows now, and a lot of that stuff was a little bit dirtier because I too, like you, started working on, okay, this is going to be my big 90-minute thing, And when I took the class at the Improv, our instructor, Matt Kazam, who's actually, he's a veteran comedian of like 30 years. He used to he moved from Washington to do shows in Vegas, and now he actually has a company that teaches comedy to entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies, as a way of them breaking their shell and learning how to be better at public speaking.
Right.
And these guys are paying like 15 grand for these classes. It's amazing.
So it's like Toastmasters with jokes.
Yeah.
Okay. Y'all can Google Toastmasters. You kids, Google Toastmasters.
Yeah,
I'm not explaining it.
It was weird because, all during our class, he's like, well, you'll do comedy, don't expect to make money at this, for 10 years. He's like, you'll probably not get your first paid gig for 2-3 years, maybe, And I think it was like maybe 4 weeks after his class, a friend of a friend of a friend had talked to this guy who was producing a show for PBS, who said, hey, I heard about you and heard about your stuff, and I want to talk to you about doing comedy on a PBS special. And so he's like, I'll pay you $3,500 for 35 minutes of jokes, and then we'll have you co-hosting. And the whole premise of this was during the mortgage crisis, and he's like, it's going to be all about the mortgage crisis and financing and stuff like that. And I said, sure, $3,500, great, And then I started writing jokes about the mortgage crisis. And about, I'd say about 2 weeks before the show, he goes, hey, I got to tell you, we're going with a different comedy co-host. He goes, but I still, have sent you the check for $3,500. I want you to do studio warm-up if you still have the 35 minutes. And I wound up doing this special with Kim Coles, was the person that they tapped for the comedy host. And so I did this whole series of, jokes about the downturn in the economy and mortgage and all that stuff. And so some of those jokes, they're when you're doing that topical stuff, it's like you really liked them at the time and they were really, cute and funny, but they just don't transpire, because this is like 2010, I guess. And like one of the jokes I had was like, here we are in 2010, and it said, it's a perfect name for it, because every time I look at my wallet, all my 20s have turned to 10s, and people would laugh at that. Or I was upside down in my mortgage, and I called my lender, and she said, well, we don't show you as being upside down, we show you as being inside out. And I said, well, I don't understand. What's inside out? She goes, inside out means we're on our way to take all the stuff inside your house and put it out on the lawn. So all of that stuff was funny at the time, but it hasn't aged well. But it's like, those are jokes that I really liked, and I would love to somehow be able to rework them. Who knows, the way the economy's going now, it could easily come back.
And you're the one looking for another housing bubble. No,
that's it. Yeah.
Says, come on, Biden, stop. Come on, Biden, you're fucking up my routine. Stop.
That's right. Quit fixing the economy. Let the Republicans do what they do.
That's right. Let them wreck it. Come on, I got jokes to tell. All right, I'm gonna put start the second clip here.
Mm-hmm.
Part 2. Chipp Jones in New York. Part 2.
You may have noticed that I have long dreadlocks. It's kind of weird, because when people see that, they automatically assume that I smoke and sell weed. I don't smoke weed. Don't worry, birthday girls, I'm still selling it. See you later. I am African American. I had a woman question me that. She said, I can tell by your hair you're probably African American, but you're very light skinned. How does that happen? Slavery. Send me a card. Like many African Americans, I suffer from big bones. It's compounded by the fact that I'm fat. I took up running. I figured that would work, but I thought I could only run if there's a Popeyes at the end of it. So I ran for a week. I did 20 miles and I gained 12 pounds. No longer a runner. Did you ever go to a McDonald's and order so much food that you bought a second soda because you didn't want to think you were going to eat all that? Thanks for laughing. But I'm not too concerned because, there are places around the globe where fat guys are in. Hawaii is a perfect example. A man in Hawaii is judged by the amount of shade he can provide for his family. I figure a few more extra value meals and I could cover the in-laws. Supersize them and I got the dog. Gotcha. I found this really cool site on the web. Not porn, sorry. It's called propertyroom.com. Anyone familiar with this? Yeah? It's an eBay auction site, but all the items are things that have been confiscated by the police in drug busts and raids. So last week I was spending money left and right buying shit off this site. And I've just about got all my stuff back from the cops. I got a couple more bids out. Hopefully I'll get back the wedding ring and the family photos. Cross your fingers for me. I am married. And we had a little hiccup this year because my wife was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Yeah, sad. So I'm the dutiful husband. I was there in the recovery room after the surgery to remove it. And it was at that point that I realized that dudes and chicks are different. Because my wife looked up from the bed with this orange betadine solution on her head and a wound that's stapled shut. And the first thing she says to me is, "How do I look?" What? How do I look? Is the scar noticeable? No, honey, you look fine. But in my mind, I'm thinking the only thing missing from this picture are bolts hanging out of her neck. I'm moving toward a window to make sure the villagers aren't gathering with pitchforks and torches. So no, honey, you look fine. But the surgery was successful. I would be a real asshole if she had died, right? Let me tell you a joke about my dead wife. After 3 days, the doctor said, I think we're ready to send her home. Got one little caveat, though. You guys should abstain from sex for 3 weeks. I said, well, Doc, Valentine's Day's already passed, and my birthday's not till October, so I think we're good on that. Thanks again for laughing.
So, during that, how long did your wife have the tumor before the operation?
So we went through differential diagnosis for a year. Kind of like the TV show House, where they're basically throwing spaghetti up against the wall to see what sticks. So we went through these things of ruling stuff out. Was it MS? Was it cystosarcoma, which is actually it's a little worm that will make its home in your head.
Right.
And as the worm dies, it gives off a signal that lets your body see that it's there. Because we had been a few months before that, we had actually been down in Mexico. And as I said, my wife was like executive producer at NPR. We had been down in Mexico when they had a hurricane, and we were going to come back. And my wife goes, "Oh, I told NPR that we would stay for the hurricane because the Mexican reporters actually in Afghanistan now covering the war." And I said, "Oh, so we're staying for the hurricane?" So we stayed for the hurricane, and then after that, we were basically down in this Cancun area, and after that, we went around with the mayor of the Providence to inspect the damage. And so we were walking through water that was like 4 or 5 inches deep, and of course she only had shoes that she brought for being on vacation. So she was walking through, this water, and they thought, oh, well, she could have gotten this worm in through feet, and then they would have made her way up. So they had to test for that. They had to do, spinal tap, to test for MS, all of these different things. So it took about a year before they latched on that she had this this thing called a DNET tumor. It's a slow-growing tumor, and it's more commonly diagnosed in teenagers. So they assume that she has had this tumor since she was a teenager, and it's slow growing, and so it had grown to the point that it actually started to affect her. What she was having that gave her the first signal was that she was having these olfactory hallucinations.
Okay.
She was smelling things that weren't there. And it's funny because, like I said, news person, she's always reading. She's like, I think I have a brain tumor. And I'm like, oh, you're silly. That's stupid. And she goes, well, I'm smelling. She kept smelling burning rubber, which I always thought was interesting too, because the top three smells for these olfactory hallucinations are burning rubber, hot garbage, or decomposing body. So it's like your body is trying to tell you that something's wrong. Because
Right.
if the olfactory hallucination were fresh baked cookies and roses, maybe you would so concerned to go see a doctor. So,
but you would be disappointed every time you walk into a room and smell it and not see it.
And that's it, yeah. And I always thought it's weird. It's like I could get the hot garbage, I can get the burning rubber, but if you know by smell decomposing body, I want to know more about you. I want people inspecting your basement. I think there's something wrong there. That's a little more, fearful for me than you having a tumor. It's like, what are you doing in that house that you know what a body smells like? Yeah.
Well, but not all bodies, just decomposing.
Yeah, interesting
ones.
enough, that was the subject of my first stand-up at the Improv. I did 12 minutes on my wife's tumor, called Tumor Humor, and she was early online in these groups that people would start for people that had like illnesses. And so when I did that tumor humor, she told people about it, and it wound up getting posted in some of these groups. People really liked it because it sort of encapsulated the process of going through a brain tumor, finding out, first of all, what it is and then what your options are. But yeah, so.
It's funny how with
out of pain comes. What is it? It's
no gain, no pain, or
well, they say it's always tragedy times time, right? So
yeah, that's where is it? So his time plus tragedy plus time equals comedy. That's it.
Right.
That's okay. So I guess that's one of the things that if I at least with I want to say more mature comedians, because like I said, when you started basically the tumor humor was almost like your beginnings. So you like skipped over the dick joke phase.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because most comedians, when they start out with the dick jokes, the vagina jokes, and like in your case, you started right off with the tumor. I started off, my early sets was about my mother dying.
Right.
Because the week that I started doing comedy, I found that my mother was terminally ill with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, my first few sets all about my mother dying and us preparing for her passing and stuff like that, skipping right over the dick joke phase of early comedianship.
Yeah, because when I started, I was basically NPR comic. I was doing topical news, that kind of stuff.
Right.
My life kind of stuff. And in fact, what happened is, I guess it was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I did this show where the two comics in front of me were extremely dirty. I mean, this one comedian, this woman from Boston, her whole 7-minute set was, you've been effed well if this happens. And so I come up behind that with this, hey, did you hear the news? This sort of stuff. And it's like the audience just couldn't make that turn. It was just too drastic a turn. And so for the next 9 months, I intentionally reached out to bookers and got on dirty shows and started writing dirty material just to have that as an arrow in my quill. Because it's like, I didn't have any dirty material. There's nothing I could come up behind them and do dirty material,
Well, the closest thing I had to dirty material was stuff if I got it out of the news, because I'm not big on, well, like you, my vocabulary is big enough that I don't have to resort to, the dick jokes and stuff like that. I like to show off. I mean, matter of fact, comedy is my safe place, because in the real world, I did not like showing off how well spoken I was or how intelligent I was in the real world. I was very uncomfortable with that. So comedy is a place where I can be as smart as I want to be, and hopefully the audience can keep up, so I can show off there. And so there's no need for the dick jokes. So, but my first paying gig as a comedian, I was doing stuff out of the news, and this one woman says to me, "You are very, very funny, and you made up all that stuff." I said, "No, that's out of the news. Those things actually happen." She goes, "Oh, then you're not as funny as I thought you were." So now I'm defending myself. I says, "No. If you read this story about this guy raping an alligator, you'd be grossed out." I said, "I made it funny." I said, "The news article is gross. I made it funny. That's what I did." And she's been, like, I've been doing comedy for 8 years now, so she's been a fan of mine for 8 years. She was there for like my first paying gig, and she's been a fan ever since. But it's just funny that her first impression of me was that when she realized that these are news stories,
she thought you were just reading it, right?
Yeah, like I was just reading, like the newspaper would come out that funny. Really, the newspaper would never have died if it was that funny. So.
But yeah, because when I started out too, there was this comedian who's out in LA now, who was 14 at the time. He started doing comedy when he was 14. So his mom would be there in these shows. And and we would do shows together. And then he was a little more on the normal comedian track at 14, so he was doing dirty material before I was. And so when I got into doing these dirty shows, he would be there again with his mom. And his mom was like, I have to tell you this. She goes, "I've always liked your stuff." She goes, "And it's funny because you're doing dirty jokes now, but they're still very much like your regular stuff. They're not like dirty the way these guys do." Because I would do jokes like like they were still Playboy at the time. I said, "Well, the Playboy for many years would not shoot models that were totally shaven. And in fact, if a model showed up totally shaven, they would put a merkin on them. I don't know if you know what a merkin is. It's a pussy toupee is what it is. So they put the pussy toupee on them." I said, "But they only had to do that in America. In Europe, they would just have the girls comb their leg hair over, And she's like, "You still write these jokes that are very much like your regular material. They just have a little edge to them." So it's like, so I still never really did sort of dick jokes,
Yeah, I still don't, man. I have a disclaimer that I say to people. Well, I guess it's one of my standards, because I will say, I don't know if I can get it right. I will say to them, "I'm apologizing now. I do not do dick jokes.
Right.
I have thoughtful penis commentary,
Right,
with the humorous bent, usually to the left, and that's it. That's it. But then so anything else I say after that is kind of like dirty-ish, but it's not like my dick is I don't do that.
Right.
I like to show off the fact that I have a bigger vocabulary than that.
Well, that's the other thing too, is because I do a 60-minute set,
Yeah.
and I would have no F bombs, and I'd have one N word. That was it. And the N word would be that one that was in the slavery card. It's like, except that one though I wrote this one joke in specific for, as they say, an urban audience in Temple Hills, Maryland. I did this satirical ending that just did not go over well. I went through and said people were having fun and stuff, and then I got to the end and I said, "Oh, I got to go." I said, "You know what? I forgot. I just recently joined this Federation of Black Comedians, and I haven't done the type of jokes that I'm supposed to do for the Federation." I said, "Let's see. I'm supposed to go nigga, 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 bitch, hold child support." Okay, I think I covered everything I'm supposed to do. And these people were like, like, "Oh, boo, Black comedians don't do that. No, no, no." And then the guy that came up behind me, it's like 21 years old, first thing out of his mouth, "This bitch hoe's asking me for child support." I'm just like, really? Really? You've never seen a comedian say the stuff I just said? How about this guy right here?
I did a show in New York with Alex Starr. You mentioned Alex Starr.
Oh yeah, I did a lot of shows with Alex Starr.
I did an Alex, and this is probably the first show I did for Alex Starr in New York. And my ending joke was I apologize that I said I don't have any nigger jokes. I said I apologize, I don't have any nigger jokes. If I did have a nigger joke, it would be something like this. Two niggers get into a cab, like the cab would have stopped. And and so I did that, and Alex Starr walks up to me and goes, "I don't know how I feel about that joke." he goes, "It's funny, but I'm not sure how I feel about it." I said, did you laugh? Because yeah, but I'm not sure I should have laughed.
That's it.
So, well, now that we got all the
I was thinking like two niggers get into a cab. Well, if the cab stopped, then that means there are three niggers in the cab. Because ain't no white cab drivers for two black guys.
Thank you for making my joke better.
Not better, just different.
Different. Yeah, it's different. Yeah. Although I retired that one. I haven't done it since 2016. So that's the first time I've done it. Yeah, since 2016. So, hi, I'm GD Fenderson, certified forensic humorist and host of Done Way Past Funny. You have just watched part 2 of our interview with Chipp Jones. Please join us for part 3. And when you come back to join us, bring a friend.